Thanks for watching the Daily Debate live here on Nile TV International. I'm Hazem, and I have the pleasure of your company for the coming hour. Till the top of the hour, we will be talking about the vision of how we can bring Africans together on the path of partnership and development. The leading story throughout the past days has been the Arab-African Summit in Guinea. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi had attended and delivered Egypt's speech before that important gathering. Today we'll be further discussing more how is Egypt enhancing and working on enhancing a sense of cooperation with all our African brothers, economic cooperation between the Arab world and Africa, and how this is going to serve Arab and African interests, Egypt's capability of serving such objectives, the chances of the Afro-Arab cooperation and integration, and more. And also the role, a very important role that is played by the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development in that respect, Egypt opening up to the world. Africans feeling that Egypt is back has been actually a milestone happening under His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and according to his directives, and the African brothers really feel it. We have always the honor and the pleasure to have with us His Excellency Ambassador Hazem Fahmy. Ambassador Dr. Hazem Fahmy is the Secretary General of the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming to the debate tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And we commend the role that is played by the agency in bringing all African brothers back to Egypt. A very important role played by the agency. We'll be talking about that important role, about the achievements taking place. Let's first watch this report and we'll be back.
Head of states, ministers, business leaders, policymakers, investment promotion agencies and development partners attended Africa 2016, the biggest regional business and investment forum taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh that was held under the auspices of President Fattah al-Sisi for an extensive dialogue on Africa, the world's last investment frontier. Over 2 days, international influential business leaders and investors from all over the world met to tackle some key issues in an increasingly complex global economic context and to share insights and experiences with companies and organizations that are driving growth and investments across Africa. Some 1,500 delegates from Africa and the world attended the forum, which covers multiple sectors, including energy, ICT, financial services, trade, agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, and health. In his inaugural speech, President Sisi said that the forum not only aimed to present investment opportunities that Africa offers to the international business community, but also to pave the way for more communication and cooperation. El-Sisi said that attaining development is the main challenge facing Africa and requires developing mechanisms of African joint action, especially in light of the need of implementing mega regional projects in several spheres. In his special address, Dr. Hailemariam Desalegn, Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, said that Africa is no longer the dark continent of strife. It is now home to the world's fastest economies. He added that Africa still has many opportunities for local and foreign investors. President of the African Development Bank said that breaking down the barriers is the key to Africa's long-term growth and prosperity. He added that the Africa Rising story is not over, as Africa's growth is projected at 4.4% and will strengthen further to 5% in 2017, and is still the best place to invest, noting that some challenges need to be tackled in order to unlock the enormous potential of African countries.
So as a flashback, Excellency, it was a very important event. And we know, of course, that the agency had a very important role to play in that respect, bringing Africans back to Egypt and Egypt back to Africans. What has been achieved so far? What do you consider to be the milestones that were actually established?
Well, before that particular investment forum, one of the biggest milestones was the a tripartite summit among the three largest trading blocs in Africa, the SADC, the COMESA, and the East African Community. This was held in June 2015 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it established the largest free trade area in Africa and number 16 worldwide. So and it encompasses like 2/3 of the African economy, 60% of its GNP, it's $1.3 trillion. When you establish such a huge free trade area, it opens a huge space and unlock a lot of potential for intra-African investment and trade, which invites foreign direct investment as well as intra-African investment. So this forum was the first step towards operationalizing such a huge free trade area. Currently, as we speak, there is negotiations going on for a continental free trade area for the entire continent of Africa. It's expected to finish by 2017. It might drag a little bit beyond that, but this is a very important milestone on the road as well. Nationally and locally in Egypt, one of the largest projects that will contribute, inshallah, very well to the future of Egypt and its integration with Africa is the Suez Canal Economic Zone. Of course, Egypt is strategically located to be the hub of Africa trade with the rest of the world. And hopefully this strategic region, of course, with the doubling of the route of the Suez Canal itself, should unleash a lot of potential for the future of Egypt as the link between Africa and the rest of the world. Of course, this is work in progress, and we know that people are working very hard in this area and in the Suez Canal area, and we hope that this materializes quite soon in terms and reflects upon the prosperity of Egyptians as well as Africa itself.
Mr. Ambassador, the whole world has become interested in the Suez Canal Economic Zone, but how about unleashing more potential in Africa specifically? As you've mentioned, Egypt is considered the gateway. That's why everybody is interested in doing lots of work and business, plus, of course, the investment potential in the country and the climate that we're really working on to unleash more potential. The areas of cooperation, what are they mainly interested in?
The Africans? Or
yes, Africans, yes.
Well, of course, as was mentioned in the introduction by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, the fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. And this is the last investment frontier, as was mentioned in your report. Of course, there is a dire need in most African countries now for a huge economic development in several areas like telecommunication, infrastructure, transportation, medicine. I mean, all these areas are areas also which Egypt has a big niche in and has a good experience in. So these and other areas are African countries very in dire need of expertise and of investments in this area. So this is some areas that we hope that the Egyptian economy will manage to make use of, particularly with this expanded free trade area. In addition to that, when you create this huge free economic space, as I mentioned, foreign investors, they want to be located in this in order to benefit from these new opportunities. And usually they seek areas where you have good infrastructure where they can locate and export to the rest of the area. So, of course, Egypt is very well situated in that sense. We have one of the best infrastructure in the continent. Maybe the only other country that has a similar one is South Africa. So that makes us both, I mean, very well situated, but we have an added advantage at our strategic position at the crossroads of the old continents and the old world is also give us an added advantage in that regard. So the history and the future is full of opportunities that we hope we can grasp them soon, and they reflect, as I mentioned, on the prosperity not only on Egypt but in the entire African continent. Definitely.
The strategic framework according to which, Excellency, we're working and the objectives of the agency in handling that. In achieving targets.
Yes. From this angle, the agency is trying to facilitate and foster relations between Egyptian and African private sector, and this forum was one example of that. We also try to work on trying to develop our capacities. For example, we have an extensive network of embassies and consulate in the African continent. We are trying now to build a program in the process of doing it to try to add capacities and develop skills for our diplomats in the African continent in order to be helped to facilitate that work with the private sector. Of course, on the other hand, we are working on the development area in the human resource capacity building and the institutional capacity building for African brothers and sisters, where annually we host around 108 training programs in various areas. 20 or 30 different areas. Most prominent among them, of course, is medicine, agriculture, irrigation, navigation, even security, counterterrorism, illegal migration. I mean, the list is quite long. I cannot exhaust it all. So in the first 2 years of the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development, we have hosted more than 4,000 African brothers and sisters in these programs, and we are moving forward in a more expanded cooperation in this area. Also, finally, I mentioned we also do send experts in the field upon request, and again, the two most prominent areas are medicine and agriculture. And within our limited capacity, we try to facilitate the establishment of some medical facilities within hospitals in different African countries.
Definitely. Well, more than one important aspect, strengthening South-South cooperation is also high on the agenda, isn't it?
That is the key issue, of course, because we are not like a donor like North-South. We are Southern brothers among themselves, sharing expertise and whatever resources they have among each other. And of course, one central feature of this is unconditional. You're just doing it for the benefit of everybody. It's win-win for both sides.
And supporting economic cooperation and integration between Egypt and the African countries, how are we facilitating the movement?
As I said, we facilitated in such the forum which we had. It was the first ever African forum with an African agenda for Africans and among Africans. And also we are trying to build some information technology portals to share information about business profiles in different African countries, and also to provide information for our funding arrangements and instruments provided by banks, whether regional, global, or national, in the areas of facilitating trade and finance and investment among African countries, including securing against political risk or economic risk in these areas.
Right. We have with us over the line, Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Al-Arabi, former Foreign Minister. Thank you very much, Excellency, for joining Nile TV International. And we're talking about Egypt attending the Arab-African Summit in Guinea, and the President himself sharing. This is in itself a message, isn't it?
Well, I think, it gives the impression that Egypt is paying more attention to the, all the problems in Africa, and that we have a real plan, to integrate into the African countries. And also we are trying to reach a comprehensive, approach from the Arab countries towards Africa. And I think this is what we need. We need, one vision and one approach from all the Arab countries to the African, countries, in order to try to tackle some of the problems which they are facing. I think the lack of development is one of the most important, the problems they are facing in Africa. So I guess the Arab countries should play an important role to give them, this kind of impetus to the economic situation. And Africa is suffering also from terrorism, from civil wars, from corruption, from many other things. So I think the Arab world also could extend, a great hand to help them, to solve all these problems, which I think it will have a positive impact on the economic situation in Africa. And this is what we need now.
Yeah. Excellency, how do you see the chances of Afro-Arab cooperation and integration meanwhile?
Well, we need, first of all, an Arab joint approach towards Africa. I think we have a separate efforts from different countries like Kuwait, Emirates, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, and some others. And this is actually, we could say it was a sort of bilateral, relation. What we need now, we need a comprehensive plan from the Arab League, how to approach the African problems. I think this will be more strong and maybe more efficient, but not to depend on, bilateral issues. Because, yes, Kuwait, we have the Kuwaiti Fund working in Africa. Egypt also has its own, fund which is working in Africa. So imagine if we can, combine all these funds, in one, I would say, bank or whatever, in order to help the African countries. I think this will be more effective and will have a great, even influence on the African countries, which is what we need now, because we are challenged by, efforts from Turkey, from Iran, from Israel, from China, from Japan, from different countries. They are trying to approach Africa and even, to control some African countries. So the Arab world should not be, act and be proactive in the near future in order to regain this kind of nature of the ties between the Arab countries and the African countries.
Definitely, and Egypt's capability serving such objectives is very important as well, Excellency.
Yes, Egypt has a great credit, in Africa, and we should build on it. And I think we are able and, confident in order to have more efforts towards Africa. And you can see a lot of, Egyptian companies working now in Africa. We have some teachers, doctors, professors, engineers. And we have also our African agency, which is providing, Africa with a lot of technical help.
Yeah.
So I think, yes,
and the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development as well, Excellency. And I have all the pleasure to have with me in the studio Ambassador Hazem Fahmy, the Secretary General of the agency. Yeah, would you like Excellency to direct a question to His Excellency?
Yeah, they are playing an important role there, and he is so active in Africa, and I must praise his efforts there.
Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you so much, Excellency. Ambassador Mohammed Al-Arabi, former Foreign Minister, thank you so much for the valuable information, and you're talking to us live on the daily debate for tonight. So, Excellency Ambassador Fahmy, as former Minister Al-Arabi was saying that Egypt definitely has the potential and the capability, and our presence makes the difference. What are the impressions? Let me know more about the circles in the different...
we were fortunate recently that the First Lady of Kenya, Her Excellency Margaret Kenyatta, has her own initiative in Kenya to change the lives of women and children. It's called Beyond Zero. And one of the main instruments through which they do that, they try to get mobile clinics and access areas in the country where no medical services are already being offered there. So we offered one of those mobile clinics to Kenya, and Her Excellency was courteous enough to host us in the presidential palace, where we delivered the mobile clinic, and she was very gracious in accepting it. And in the meantime, there are also I delivered to her an invitation from the Children's Cancer Hospital in Egypt to come and visit and to bring two Kenyan children who are affected by cancer to be treated at the hospital. And there is also ongoing strong cooperation between the Children's Cancer Hospital in Egypt and the Jomo Kenyatta Hospital in Nairobi. It is the largest hospital in East Africa, and the Children's Cancer Hospital of Egypt, 357, is the largest children's cancer hospital in the world. And they have a world-class expertise that they are sharing with many African countries in cooperation with us, and we are very proud of this cooperation that we are having with them as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Establishing innovative partnerships at the international level is very important. And we've talked about the medical fields. What other fields and what other visits co-relevant to other fields, Excellency?
There are so many other fields. For example, there are like so many innovative fields we have ventured into. For example, with our Anti-Corruption Agency, Administrative Control Authority, we do have now training programs with different African agencies. And as we are expanding trade and investment together, combating fraud is extremely important, and those agencies have been looking up very highly of the Egyptian expertise in this regard. We are also having cooperation in the judicial area with both Francophone and Anglophone Africa. With the Egyptian Diplomatic Institute, we also host things. This is, I believe, Dr. Sir Magdi Yaqub. We also have great cooperation with him in the African area, but he's back again to the medical field.
Yes.
We have recently been in a visit to Ethiopia, where we help provide a catheterization machine to a heart center in the largest hospital in Ethiopia. Sir Magdi Yaqub came with his medical team and started training the Ethiopian doctors on how to use this machine, and it did make a lot of difference in, they have a huge waiting list of around 22,000 patients.
Yes.
3 operations a day. With this machine, they're doing 20 a day or in 2 days, and people are discharged the second day instead of staying for a long time. And of course, Sir Magdi Yaqub, with his heart center here, he also trains African doctors and nurses. Here we help bring them in, and he takes care of all the training for them for long periods of time.
For Africans, yes.
Yes.
A continuation of the visit with Sir Magdi Yaqub and
Ethiopia,
yes, and the sense of partnership in the medical field. A very important visit, definitely.
Yes.
What Egypt is doing to the African brothers, extending help in those areas. What other activities for the agency, Mr. Ambassador? How about vocational training?
We do have, actually, in one of the African countries, we recently sent a whole set of machines of vocational training with trainers to help trainers there on the ground. And it's one area, yes, we are working on as well. It is very important. Also, we have been in cooperation with the Egyptian Social Fund for Development, trying to transpose its experience to other African countries in helping small and medium-sized projects, SMEs, to pop up and to give basic skills to small entrepreneurs on how to do business and so on.
That's great, especially the youth. They are very much interested in the story of entrepreneurship. How about training young entrepreneurs in Africa?
Actually, just put your hand on a project we are currently, about to finalize. There is a group of Egyptian businessmen who have developed what's called International Business Driving License, which give basic skills for entrepreneurs. And it's an online tool, and they have donated to us around 1,000 kits. Each one is worth around $700, which we are going to go to around 16 African countries to, in each one, get 50 young entrepreneurs, give them basic skills on how to manage human resource budgets and create a small project. And this will be very influential in creating a young entrepreneurial class in many of these African countries.
Yes. What would be some of the challenges that the young entrepreneurs face?
Well, of course, it differs from each environment. There are challenges and there are opportunities. The challenges, of course, the infrastructure in many of the countries might not be as good enough as it should be. But also this, on the other hand, gives opportunities. If you have a good idea and a good entrepreneur, he makes also unusual profit. Right. So just creating the culture and the skills for a young, bright person to be an entrepreneur creates a lot of opportunities, and it has what economists call a multiplier effect. It spills over and multiplies very fast once the expertise is created and the know-how is transformed. And we are proud and happy to be trying to do something in terms of transporting this knowledge and know-how for young African entrepreneurs.
Since its establishment, how did the agency achieve a sense of a difference than prior? After its establishment, extending a hand of cooperation and building bridges with the African nations?
Well, this happened in 2 or 3 ways. First of all, of course, we did not start from scratch. We did have a sister agency that was before us. First of all, we expanded a lot in new areas that were not covered before. And we started to have new innovative partnerships with centers of excellence in Egypt that were never ventured in before. And we were very lucky and fortunate that those centers were also very forthcoming and willing to provide their knowledge and expertise. And 3 centers that I'm always proud of, and I keep on mentioning them, is the Children's Cancer Hospital, Sir Magdi Yaqub's Heart Center, and Dr. Muhammad Ghanem Urology and Nephrology Center. These are world-class centers, and they do provide their knowledge and expertise almost for free. And we just bring the doctors and the nurses from Africa here to be trained. So actually the monetary value, if you're going to assign it for that training, is much, much more than the money we put in as an agency. And this makes a lot of difference, not only in terms of the resources it leverages.
Here with the First Lady?
Yes, this is in the Kenyan Presidential Palace. This is the mobile clinic donated by Egypt. This is my colleague, Ambassador Mahmoud Talat, on the right. And Her Excellency, the First Lady, of course, in the middle. And then our colleague, Dina Sabri, from the Second Secretary in the Egyptian Embassy in Nairobi.
How do they feel upon that moment? I mean, what do they express? How do they express a sense of a new era of cooperation with Egypt?
Of course, when it's such a high level, when it's a First Lady having a very effective program in her own country and we partner with her, of course, it gives both sides a sense of pride and solidarity.
It's a win-win situation.
Of course, and it spills over for everybody, and it's a model of cooperation between brotherly countries. Kenya is a very important country in the Nile Basin, and we have very strong relations with them.
Yeah.
And it was
we want to know more about
there.
cooperation with Kenya, Mr. Ambassador, and how is the agency fostering also trade cooperation with Kenya as well?
As you might know, Kenya with us, they are both members of what's called the COMESA, the Common Market of East and South Africa. Kenya is a very important hub for East Africa in terms of trade and investment. We did have a couple of years ago a joint investment forum with Kenya in particular during the joint committee where the foreign minister headed the Egyptian delegation, and a lot of Egyptian businessmen were there and met Kenyan businessmen, and they tried to foster business opportunities among themselves. And also in the medical area, there's a lot of cooperation between us and Kenya. A third area which we have managed to have a contribution in as well is in the area of security. As you know, Kenya also suffers from terrorism, as does Egypt. We have a large training program with both our arms services trainings administration and also Police Academy in Egypt. We have programs for counter-terrorism and protection of VIPs and so on, which we do have them very strongly with African brothers and sisters, and Kenya also is a major beneficiary of that, and we have very good ties in this area.
That's great. We have more to discuss concerning the agency's action plan towards realizing the goals, the objectives. Those visits are also very important because they are not only fostering more concerning technically, but also concerning the mobile medical unit that has been offered, but also they bind relations among the people themselves. So fostering people-to-people relations as well. This report, and we'll be back.
Prime Minister Sharif Ismail addressed African leaders on behalf of President Fattah al-Sisi at the 6th session of the African Ministers' Conference on the Environment that was held in Cairo. This year's session follows the adoption of a historic agreement on climate change in December 2015. During the 21st session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations, the COP21, it was also preceded by the introduction of the UN's new Sustainable Development Goals in September 2015 for the next 15 years, which address climate changes as one of the main goals. Ismail said climate change and development issues currently top the agendas of African countries, adding that Africa is the most vulnerable continent to climate change effects, despite contributing the least amounts of greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. Moreover, he highlighted other key challenges in security, politics and economy facing the African continent. According to Ismail, Egypt is committed to continuing its contributions to developing the capacities of African nations through several national mechanisms, including the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development, which was established in 2014. He added that the environment is one of the cornerstones of Egypt's 2030 strategy. The strategy falls in line with the climate change goals, which include advancing the quality of life and providing clean sources of energy. Egypt sent the 2030 strategy to the Parliament at the end of March for further review. The theme of the 6th session of the AMCEN conference is Agenda 2030 and the Paris Agreement from policy to implementation in Africa.
As the Prime Minister, Excellency was further emphasizing Egypt's commitment towards Africa. And from here also came and emanated the agency's role and its foundation, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, of course. I mean, the agency is the government's arm in cooperating with the African continent, and we are very proud and honored that always our senior officials refer to it, but it also put a burden of a greater responsibility on our work, which we are proud of, and we hope to continue doing it.
How are we prioritizing our objectives in Africa and the agency's objectives in the coming stage?
First of all, there are, of course, the geographical prioritization. I mean, of course, the Nile Basin is our most important target, and we also have what we call Sahel and Sahara because of obvious reasons, and the rest of the continent. That does not mean that we discriminate in the drillings, but these are, different spheres of priorities as we work in. On the other hand, we try to focus on areas, as I said, we have so many centers of excellence in Egypt. Wherever we find we have a good niche, we can offer knowledge and expertise, we do that. We have standard programs that we do already in areas of health, agriculture, diplomacy, security, aviation, and others. Whenever we find a new partner who can give something, we do always partner with him. The agency is governed by a board headed by the foreign minister, who gives political guidance to us as we work along. So we always discuss what are the new developments, what are new areas we can contribute to. And also we have sometimes some ad hoc interventions where there is sometimes natural disasters or conflict when you need immediate assistance, where we also try to provide relief in that area.
By the way, what are new areas that we can contribute to?
One new area I mentioned, this area of entrepreneurship, which we are under consideration now. One other area we are also hope to explore very soon is our Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court is one of the most prominent in the world, and it has a very strong and solid history, and we are currently in discussion to have some kind of a meeting among Supreme Courts in the African continent to try to see how the judicial process could help sustainability of development and the rule of law within the continent. And also in other areas, as I said, business and civil aviation. We had a couple of programs. We're trying to do them again. And in the area, of course, of information and media like yours, we do have, we are planning to have a couple of programs with heads of TVs, radio stations, and major newspapers in African continent to come to Egypt to introduce our country to them. They meet officials, they meet private sector, they meet their counterparts, they meet civil society, in order to have a good grasp of what Egypt is. Because one of the problems we have been having in recent years is also the access of information and accurate knowledge about what's going in our country, which is extremely important, particularly in connecting with our African brothers and sisters. We need them to have first-hand information, what's going on, and also to create a bond among the Egyptian counterparts and among themselves. It really makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, we do have here at ERTU the training center for our African brothers, the journalists.
Yes.
And it's a very successful experience where they can
I bet it is, yes,
go back with memories from Egypt and know back about the country. Promoting investment and trade, and Egypt being up to the whole world for business. Africa has lots of potential that has not been unleashed yet. How can we further facilitate a mechanism that binds both Egypt and the rest of the African brothers in that respect?
We are hoping, like the business forum we did in Sharm el-Sheikh, to repeat it every 2 or 3 years, depending on the circumstances. And we should also keep on working very hard about overcoming any obstacles that are in the implementation of this huge area that we have negotiated. And beside that, of course, the issue of information, which is very key for business, plus always trying to find out new instruments to mitigate against political risk and economic risk as Africans do business among themselves. So these are areas which we work hard on and we try to facilitate. Of course, we as a government agency, you can only facilitate and provide information, but you don't engage in the business itself. And so after that, it's up to the private sector itself to grasp the opportunities. We try to facilitate that as much as we can. We try to be very attentive to what they are looking for and to help them through our infrastructure of diplomats and embassies and consulates that are available within the African continent.
And what did they tell you, Mr. Ambassador? What are they looking for? I mean, just roaming in Kenya, in other African countries, with Sir Magdi Yaoub in Ethiopia, throughout. What do you think is the common factor that they were all asking for?
Of course, Sir Magdi Yaoub is a different story because he's not a profit organization. I mean, he's working on a humanitarian basis, and it's really sharing of knowledge and expertise more than anything else. As for the business people, some of the common things, they have an expertise in a certain area, let's say in mining. They want to go to African country which is famous for mining. They don't know where to start. So sometimes they approach us, so we start contacting our embassy, we start to making some appointments for them with senior officials who are there, people who are dealing in the business in there. Sometimes they're going to meet some business counterparts, they need some information about them. We try to provide them what's the background, what's available, what's the reputation of those people. I mean, so this kind of really the lack of knowledge. Sometimes also they don't know what instruments are there available. For example, one of our partners in the agency is the Islamic Development Bank. If you are a member of the bank, even if you are investing in another country which is not a member of the bank, they do provide insurance against, for example, somebody will not repay you for the investment or against political risk. So many businessmen are not aware of this instrument. So us as partners of the bank and promoting business...
Without mentioning ads.
Yes, well, it's a development bank, by the way. It's not a private bank. So and this instrument is of an intergovernmental organization providing it for the private sector. So this is not a commercial. So we provide them with the information, and sometimes they're very pleased. And we know some of them who used it already while they were doing business in some African countries.
Right. Yeah. Putting Africans on the path of partnership and development, what does it take?
Oh, it takes a lot.
I mean, a lot of the hard work that the agency and other partners are doing.
To put it into context also, and to be fair to Africans and to ourselves, of course, traditionally and historically, most African countries, as they go out of colonization, their main partner, particularly in business and investment and trade, is the ex-colonizer or the dominant economic power like United States or Europe or Japan. But for the South to be among themselves, this is a little bit new, and it has a lot of mechanisms and needs a lot of hard work so that we know each other, start to work with each other and try to depend on each other. This is very key for any strong, real development to happen, because if you work with stronger parties from the outside, there's always limits to how far you can go. But if you work together with your brothers and sisters, there's no limit to what you can achieve and what you do. So we need to work very hard, change our mentalities, change our business models, and try to understand each other and our needs. And I think the sky is the limit of what we can achieve. But we have a long way to go, and we need to work very hard on that.
The soft power can also play a very important role in that respect.
Of course. Soft power as it reflected in education, in culture, in media. And of course, Egypt traditionally, historically, and currently still has this soft power. And you will be very surprised, I mean, how really Egypt is very strong and deep in the heart of many of our African brothers and sisters. I mean, when they come here, you just feel it. And they feel it vice versa as well. And as they also feel, many of them, and repeatedly they tell us, they have had similar training programs in countries that are much more advanced than we are, yet they do feel that they have benefited more because we are more sincere and honest in transmitting the knowledge, and we care more about being effective.
And they go back home with memories, different memories from Egypt.
And they bond with their counterparts here and among themselves as African, because they come from different African countries as they visit here.
The sense of diversity that Africa offers, how are we building on that as well? That can be a very important tool for strength.
It is extreme. I mean, there is definitely strength in diversity. I mean, of course, the different economic conditions, situation, backgrounds, when people meet in different training courses, no matter what the area is, it's part of the advantage and beauty of South-South cooperation is that it's a two-way path. I mean, you're not only giving them some knowledge, you learn from them as well, because they come from different backgrounds, different experiences. So just by the discussion and the debate, and they present the challenges they face, we also learn new things about how to deal with certain things in certain environments as they benefit from the knowledge we have. It's win-win, and there is a collective learning experience that definitely spills over everybody in a very positive way.
Mining, vocational training, aviation is quite interesting and unconventional.
Of course.
Yes. What does it bring?
It brings, as I told you, for example, we had our first training courses we did with the Ministry of Civil Aviation was about using satellites in safe aviation.
Very interesting.
Yes, some countries did not have expertise in that. Others had very limited expertise. So it was a very big eye-opener and a big learning experience. And not only that, they also get to know what our other strengths is in the area of aviation, whether you have like the shops for free shops and others for it, and our capabilities of our airports and so on. So they try to understand and link with what we are doing. In this area, I could mention also we did have we invited all the heads of ports, dry ports and marine ports in Africa in the Arab Academy to have a course about how sustainable management of ports. And in that, we try to link them with the Suez Canal Economic Zone and the Suez Canal area and what's being done in it. So how to link their ports and their trade with the Suez Canal and the future of Africa. And everybody learns in that, and it creates very strong links for the future of all these areas.
Developing infrastructure and a sense of facilitating transport mechanism is also a very important issue to facilitate trade.
It's one of the most important obstacles of African integration, is the area of transportation. I mean, air transportation is very expensive, and there's a lot we need to do in connecting, as I mentioned, the maritime transportation, of course, and to create lines that are economically feasible and also to be used. So you need to work on both ways, using the lines and creating the lines themselves. And there are so many ambitious projects. One of the very serious ones the Egyptian government is taking a lead in is connecting Lake Victoria with the Mediterranean.
Right.
There is a lot of landlocked countries in this. If we manage to finalize it, they will simply have a huge space to trade with the outside world through this channel that's going to link Lake Victoria with the Mediterranean. And there is also the road Alexandria Cape Town. We have opened to dry ports in Coastal and Ishkil between us and Sudan as part of the Alexandria Cape Town road, and the traffic on them has been quite heavy and extremely heavy, and they have had a big impact and a dent in the intra-African trade in that regard. Right. There are so many other schemes, of course, for Africa, including having there's a huge vision to have an extensive network of railways, but of course these need huge investments, and governments cooperating with each other as well as private sector in a sophisticated business models that we hope that we manage as African Union, as Africans, to do together.
Aside from the issue of the medical mobile unit in Kenya and meeting the First Lady, didn't the speech and didn't the chit-chat go to women empowerment?
Of course. This is actually, I mean, the whole initiative of the First Lady was about, of course, the health of women and children. But we do have a lot of courses.
Leadership skills for women, for instance.
Of course, that we do. Actually, one of the areas, since there are so many and I cannot really collect them all, we, with the National Council for Women, we are planning to do this coming year 2 programs. One of them is about African parliamentarian women.
Very good. How to engage them in decision making,
exactly,
how to campaign.
Exactly. And another program is about, we have one huge African country is having elections coming, and we are inviting a large number of women who are going to be part of the elections to give them skills in how to campaign, how to operate, and so on. And beside that, also we do have with the International Center for Agriculture here in Egypt, we do have specific course for empowerment of rural women, where we give them basic skills in how to use whatever limited resources they have in an entrepreneurial way that provides some income and wealth for them as well. And of course, the issue of gender and women empowerment is at the heart of the work we do, I mean, at the agency, and it's part of the larger goals of 2030, I mean, Sustainable Development Goals, and it's something we have strongly in our heart. And even before the 2030 Development Goals, this was always, Egypt has always been a leader in this area, and we cannot ignore it.
Definitely. The President is always engaging the youth, Excellency. We find them around in conferences and summits, and they are the treasure for the country, the hope and the future. How is the agency engaging the youth today, and how are we extending this also to another engagement on the level of the African youth?
One of the programs we are currently engaged in is with Cairo University. All or a large number of African students who are studying in Egypt, we bring around 70 of them with 70 Egyptian counterparts in what's called the African Union model, where they start brainstorming together and designing research projects on how to enhance this integration among the African Union. And they have designed a common passport, a common currency, and they do research papers and they get rewards for it. And we are partners in this. Also, Dr. Gabriel Nassar, the president of Cairo University, have put a handsome prize for the first research in this area.
So incentives, that's good.
Exactly, yes. And it's very heartening to see those African youth coming together with Egyptian counterparts and working together, creating a vision to how we can improve the working of the African Union and what new ideas they can provide in this area.
Great. Culturally, concerning our African brothers as well, we are very much interested, you know, in trying describes culture in certain countries, in their experience, in the way when we delve in African nations, in the forestry, in the film productions. It's there on as well.
Yeah. Actually, we are also, we do, in a modest way, we do a contribution for the African Film Festival that takes place in Luxor. We are part of the co-sponsors of that, and we are very conscious of that. But I have to say, because since we are not very well endowed, our resources are not are a little bit limited in that area. And I think this is one of the areas, if we have more resources, definitely, as you rightly mentioned, the area of culture is extremely important.
Yes.
Especially that Africa is extremely diverse and very rich in its different cultural backgrounds, which really could create a huge model for, I mean, as you also mentioned, diversity is key and very strong for everybody.
And people-to-people relations, the agency has managed to build bridges with the African countries, with our brothers, exchange programs, like a cruise on the Nile with the lovely African brothers and guests coming to Egypt, so that every one of them would leave with a memory from home. Well, how are we working out of the box in that respect? The people-to-people relations with African Egyptians, exploring Africa at the same time.
Well, as for Egyptians introducing themselves to Africa, with all those trainees who come to Egypt, we do make it a point, and it's central in our programs, to have a cultural view, that they see the monuments in Egypt and what the different eras of civilization we have had, and to expose them to it, and even the natural beauty in some of our places. And it's always extremely memorable for them. And beside that, there is a spillover, or what we call an externality, that happens also. They get to know each other because they come from so many different countries.
Right.
So they also, it's not, they don't only get to know Egypt, but they also get to know each other. And this creates a very special bond that is beneficial for everybody, and definitely it contributes a lot towards a common African identity as we all move forward, inshallah.
Definitely, inshallah. Well, before leaving, Ambassador Fahmy, let me discuss with Your Excellency more concerning the coming steps and your dreams for the agency, the priorities. What's next? We have established, alhamdulillah, a lot. So how about the coming future for the agency and for our relations with our African brothers?
This comes in many contexts. I mean, first of all, of course, we need to consolidate what we are doing and to, I mean, have it very well entrenched. Definitely, it's no secret, we are in a very critical transition in our economic situation in general as a country. So hopefully, inshallah, as we get through this bottleneck, we are hoping for an expanded agency with more resources, and also more unique partnerships that leverage more resources to be able to do more. And this is a job that goes beyond the government. It needs the collaboration of civil society, which are already doing, the private sector, and also, I think, there need to be deeper work in terms of developing the national consciousness of the importance of Africa and how we deal with it, I think. And you, as the media, you have a very special and important role to play in that. And I think we should be considering that seriously in our educational curriculum and in other things. I mean, we really, it is our future, and I mean, and it's limitless, the potential of what we can do together. And I think we need to be working more in that direction as well.
The future is bright, inshallah. Excellency Ambassador Dr. Hazem Fahmy, who is the Secretary General of the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development. Thank you very much, Excellency, for coming to the debate tonight, and forward ever for the agency, for Egypt, for Egypt's relations with our African brothers. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. I'm Taghreed Hussein, and that was the Daily Debate for tonight.